Welcome to Seggs Talk Radio, a podcast that explores kink and sex through candid and curious conversations. Join me and expert guests in exploring taboos and unpacking what it means to be sex and kink positive. Go check out our new website, sextalkradio.com. That is SEGGS talkradio.com. And I hope you enjoy the episode.
So I said, I'm going to try this once. Mm-hmm. If I'm okay with it, it solves all my problems. Because otherwise, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like working as am I selling drugs? Like, right. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to go back to Canada. Like, which I could not do. So I was kind of at this impasse.
Yes.
And I tried it, and it was so not at all what I thought it would be.
Over 80% of women, including myself, cannot have orgasms from penetrative sex alone. That is why it is so important that we find sex toys that we love. Honey Playbox makes an incredibly wide variety of toys. They literally have it all. They have wands, they have clit suckers, they have thrusting toys. They have so many options. And what's really cool about Honey Playbox is they are very technology forward. Many of their toys can be app controlled in addition to the regular settings and buttons on the toy, which makes it really fun for you and your partner. Go to honeyplaybox.com and use code SEGGS, SEGGS, for 20% off of your entire order. This episode of Seggs Talk Radio is brought to you by the HUD app. The HUD app is changing the face of modern and casual dating by giving users a really fun and flirty interface, and also it has bedroom features where you can select all of the kinky and naughty things you're into and show those to potential future partners. I personally love using the HUD app, and I think it's a great system for finding kinky people near you. Go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is hudapp.com/SEGGS talk TALK for more. Not everyone wants a purple sparkly dildo, so when Peep Show Toys reached out to me and sent me their line of the Solina hyper-realistic, body-safe, platinum-grade silicone dildos, I was super excited. When I say they are realistic looking, I'm serious. They are very hyper-realistic. They are soft on the outside, they are firm on the inside, and they have a suction on the bottom for hands-free play if that's what you are into. Go to peepshowtoys.com and use code SEGGS, SEGGS, for 10% off of your entire order. I recently squirted for the first time, and it was a lot of liquid. That's why I'm so glad that I've since found Splash Blanket. They create incredible waterproof blankets for all types of fluids. They have them in a bunch of different sizes and textures, and they are truly incredible and very absorbent. Go to splashblanket.us and use code SEGGS for 15% off of your entire order. When I started optimizing my life around my menstrual cycle, everything changed for the better. That is why I love the Stardust app. It is far more than a period tracker. It is an entire hormonal health universe inside of an app. I've been using it for quite a while now, and what I love the most is the beautiful design. I love that I can share my cycle with a friend or with a partner. I get customized notifications, and I've learned so much about my cycle and about hormones. So wherever you get your apps, search for the Stardust app, and I look forward to your thoughts. How's it going?
It's going. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Really. Mm-hmm.
We are both kind of in limbo of where we live, but where did I meet? How did I initially?
I reached out to you.
Yes.
I sent you a massage. Remember?
I forgot that was fucking you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I'm a really good person.
You are. Okay, wait. That's so weird. I was in such a trauma state for that month of summer that I forgot that was you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know how it escalated from there. It was, I was love bombing you.
Well, we kind of love bombed each other. Yes. Yeah. That was I need to go get that. Okay, great. Thank you for the reminder. Actually, that's
back in
your love language.
Yeah.
Buying massages for people.
Buying gifts for people. I'm not really good with expressing emotion, even though I have an abundance of emotions. So I just buy people things.
Yes. Okay. I totally forgot that was you. Yeah, we've been kind of hot and heavy the last few months, I guess.
Came on real quick.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you work currently, what you're up to.
Yeah. So I am a certified sexologist and coach. Sex coach, intimacy coach. And I work full-time for Sexsual Health Alliance, where we certify sex therapists, coaches, educators, and counselors. So that's my full-time job. And then I have clients on the side while I'm launching my practice. And I work with sex workers predominantly on being autonomous and sovereign in their sexuality and their choices. And I also work with a lot of men.
What was that look?
It's my sweet spot.
Yeah,
it's like I always say, I trust men and
Yes.
sex workers, which says
Wow.
no one ever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'll never hear that sentence again.
No, I mean, I don't even think it's about who you trust, who you work with. It's about who you want to impact, you know, and the impact you want to have. So with Sexual Health Alliance, that is for people who have to have preliminary therapy, not necessarily.
No, if you want to
on your
become a therapist, a sex therapist,
You have to become a therapist.
yeah,
before becoming.
yeah, exactly. Then you can get your certification.
Gotcha.
I love them. I actually went abroad with them. That's how I first was introduced. I studied the legal model of sex work in Amsterdam and in Berlin last year. And I just loved their whole unbiased approach of what they were doing. And through my lens of sex work in North America, it was like completely different. I thought I knew what I was talking about and I thought I had a certain stance on it. And where it's legal, it's just so freaking different. So I really love the work they're doing. And also, much to what everyone thinks, you don't have to be ASECT certified. ASECT is the American Association of Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And we'll get into this, but just start on a real banger here.
Yeah.
But they will not certify anyone that's worked in sex work. Which is insane because that lived experience counts for everything. They'll certify sexological body workers and surrogate partners, but they won't certify anyone that's done anything in sex work whatsoever. So it's kind of this silent.
So ASECT is like the main.
Yeah, everyone wants to be ASECT approved. So Shaw opened in response to that because they're like, this is kind of bullshit, even though they're still certified. They have the ASECT credentials.
Right.
But yeah, so long story short, you don't need to be ASECT certified or have your master's degree to be a sex educator or counselor or coach or sexologist.
Wow. Okay, lots to jump into there. I interviewed Justin Lay-Miller, who also works with Shaw, and he was sharing in the interview I did with him about how like the biggest thing, like people would send in journaling stuff like before and after their trips, these abroad trips. And the biggest takeaway was like people shift in how they perceive sex work was like these judgments, but then just like witnessing it coming up and against it and like meeting sex workers. He just said that was the biggest takeaway from people who went on the study abroad trips, which is like so important, especially if somebody's going to then be counseling some of these things.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's so vastly different there. On the plus side, they have a sense of community, right? Because it's open.
Yes.
It's legal. So they have these communities, these houses you can go to, and there's like women, you know, of all ages, like knitting, having coffee, whatever. It's just so open. Most of them are in relationships. A lot of them have children. I think most of them actually have children.
Wow.
But here's the difference is as a sex worker there, you're making on average, the average rate, is 50 euros per 15 minutes. Okay.
15.
And the average appointment is actually 6 to 8 minutes. And these women are seeing up to 15 clients a day. So, you know, coming from North America, where if you were a high-end escort, you're making like $1,200, $1,500 more an hour.
And there's a minimum
seeing
usually.
A client or two, maybe only 1 or 2 a week, maybe just as needed. You know, there to make a living, you're seeing 10 to 20, up to 20 clients a day. So
the grass isn't always green.
I mean, as a coach, you know, I couldn't handle talking to that many people a day.
Right.
So just think about the you know, like psychological output and the physical output, like that is exhaustive. So the differentiated care needs to be acknowledged. Like how you would interact with sex workers over there is vastly different than here.
What's interesting is that this makes me think about my experience having a cannabis company during decriminalization and then legalization, because I think there's such a huge difference between decriminalization and legalization.
Oh my God, totally.
Once something is legalized, and I literally saw this play out with cannabis, like I was making so much money in cash off the books, like living my best life with my company. And then legalization happened, and suddenly this agency was taking 20% taxes. This agency was taking another 20. I'm not joking. Like cannabis was taxed to 40%. There were heavy regulations on how we did everything. Every plant had to have an ID tag that got traced throughout its entire lifespan. But like it can become more harmful when something is legalized because suddenly the person or the cannabis grower, there has to be more output.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people wanting a piece of your pie, which when it's like your body, that's intense.
Yeah. I mean, think about like the average price point is bound to go down if it's legal, right? So the reason the reason why women get into it here is because it affords them the ability to have a certain lifestyle, go to school. A lot of women I know are, like have their master's degrees or went back to school, used it as a launch pad for their company, or it's subsidizing their income in some way, shape, or form.
Highly
there,
profitable.
it's just like solely their existence. Plus, the hours there, it's like, you were saying like 5 to 11 a.m. or I don't know, weird shit like that.
Yeah. Okay. So sex work is a part of your story.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you got started, what that looked like?
I moved to Los Angeles
from
Toronto.
Oh, that's right. I always forget you're
Canadian. So many layers. I've had
foreigner
my
here.
9 cat lives. And I started,
you have had so many lives.
Yeah.
Chef. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Singer.
I know. Chef's court. Yeah. Just kidding. I wish. I moved to LA and I had to start up an RFID company.
What's that mean?
Radio frequency identifiers. So the wristbands that you put on when you go to conferences and music festivals, and you do cashless payments, access control, analytics. I decided to pursue that. I came from
it was hot. Too,
right? It didn't work out.
Oh.
Partner embezzled funds. It was a whole ordeal. But I ran out of money, right? And we had to bankroll a lot. So I'd always been very curious about sex work and just sex in general. Which I found impossible to reconcile with. I just felt so much shame around my sexuality and what I was supposed to do. And
I've always had like a fantasy of sex work.
Yeah. I was like cryptically like, I don't even know what to make of it. Like obsessed with it from like being a young girl. Sorry, Mom. I hope
one of my first audiobooks that I downloaded was like a history of a brothel.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I mean, we love courtisan history as we know. Like it traces way, way back. I could get into the lineage, the Mary Magdalene archetype, all of that. And so I said, I'm going to try this once. If I'm okay with it, it solves all my problems. Because otherwise, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like working as am I selling drugs? Like, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to go back to Canada. Like, which I could not do. So I was kind of at this impasse. Yes. And I tried it, and it was so not at all what I thought it would be. Yeah.
How did you I think that the logistics are overwhelming for some women. So like,
you're thrown into their like line of fire. Like, what? No one tells you what to do, right? Like it's all just assumed.
So that was an ad somewhere.
Which is why I want to work with sex workers. Like women that are new to this and don't know what their boundaries are, don't know what it's like, and need that community element as well. And,
totally.
I found a booker. And I reached out, and then literally I went into her office, and she was like, "Just sign it." And I was like, "Okay." And what do I do? She's like, "I'll let you know when you get a client, and then then email them back." And I'm like, and I was like, "So who negotiates that?" She's like, "Whatever you want to do." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, the Wild West.
So I met this guy. I remember specifically, I was coming back from a friend. I was terrified. And I was coming back from a friend's birthday in Miami, and he was flying out. So we decided to meet at LAX at an airport hotel. And I was like coming off like a bender of a birthday weekend.
Oh my
And I'd never done it before, obviously. And so we meet, and I found out years later, because we stayed friendly. He's a really sweet guy. That it was his first time as well. Which I never admitted it was mine.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So he was just so
was
sweet,
a little nervous.
so timid, but like he works at a record label and listens to the coolest music. He was wearing like a Slow Dive shirt, so I thought that was amazing. And it was just like 85% talking, Yeah. Well, clearly also because it was his first time, so like, and we were both nervous. But it was just that intimacy, which I've spoken to you about, that I just don't find. You can't find that in the real world because you're
like
there.
The raw shit. Like
it's just like if it's already
raw
baseline transactional, then anything that's happening in the interaction beyond the sex and the money is like completely discretionary, and it's so authentic.
It's a vulnerable space.
It really is. It really is. And it is correlated with socioeconomic factors too. Like this is why I don't like to say all sex work is good, because it's absolutely not the case, right? And we also know it gets conflated with sex trafficking, very different. Coercion, very different.
Yes.
But at a certain income bracket, And I listened to something recently that spoke about how with sex work, like money is the great equalizer. Like if you're doing well in sex work, then people kind of don't really care, you know, which is the weird thing. Or they think it's fascinating.
It's the hierarchy
but
thing.
yeah.
The high-end escort is holier than the street escort.
Exactly. Or the, you know, the stripper that's making X amount versus the, you know, and a dom is more respected than an escort and all these things. So, and OnlyFans creators more respected
digital
too.
Sex work.
Like that's what I find fascinating, you know?
It's fascinating. And it's fucked up, man.
Yeah. But I think OnlyFans, I'm pivoting slightly, but I think OnlyFans has helped us come a long way.
Right. Like
destigmatizing.
Like everybody's fucking cousin.
And hey, if I was 25, not 35, then, you know, absolutely.
Right.
But I'm like, the only thing the only reason, this is so ridiculous, I'll just be honest, the only reason I wouldn't do it is because I don't really have that much of an Instagram following. I kind of hate social media.
Love
necessary evil. Yeah, I know. I'm really good at it, but yeah.
Yeah.
But if I didn't get enough traction, I'd be like, this is just embarrassing, you know?
Well, this is what women need to understand, is it takes a fucking year and a half. I
asked you. I was like, I want to start, and you're like, don't.
Don't.
I was like, really? But I have this whole angle. I have this.
It took me 6 months, over 6 months of my Patreon to make more than $1,000 a month, and I still hover at about I pay for our Patreon. Sign up. I still hover at about $1,500 a month. And I just decided to like act, and this is such an ADHD problem of like, I just decided to like pre-schedule posts. Otherwise, my fans weren't hearing from me for 2 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
So I just started pre-scheduling because I'm like, okay, I'm moving to New York. Actually, $1,500 to $2,000 a month would be great. So I'm not going to let this die. Anyways, all of that to say, OnlyFans is a lot of work, especially right now it's saturated. But I think it's really important to understand that like, yes, OnlyFans, we can consider it sex work, but it's completely different than in real life sex work. Yeah. And the risks are dramatically different. That you run the risk of, you know, bullying, cyber stalking, that kind of thing. But it's very different than in real life.
You also don't have your anonymity, you know? Some do. Like, meaning if you're a content creator, everyone knows who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Face.
So the perk for me, the benefit, and also, you know, the negative of that as well, the curse of it was that I could hide, but then I did. And I was never in a relationship when I was doing it. I tried dating, and then I would have panic attacks just being like, I can't lie. I can't live this lie.
My favorite Honey Playbox sex toy has to be the Joy Thrust. What is so cool about this toy is that this part vibrates and thrusts, which stimulates the G-spot, and this end stimulates the clitoris. Their products cover a massive, wide variety of experiences and desires, and the majority of them are app-enabled. So in addition to the buttons on the toys, you can adjust the intensity of the toy on an app on your phone, which makes for really fun, spicy playtime. If you're curious about trying out app-enabled sex toys, go to honeyplaybox.com and use code SEGGS, S-E-G-G-S, for 20% off of your entire order. If you are watching or listening to this, you're probably interested in sex and or kink and are curious about finding new partners to explore things with. However, it can be difficult to find those people. The thing I love about the HUD app is that it's more than just an app. They have a community, a podcast, and a ton of education. And inside of their app is a bedroom feature, so you can select all of the things you're interested in, all of the things you want to try, all of the things you don't want to try, and that can be shown to potential future partners. So to learn more, go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is hudapp.com/sextalk, SEGGSTALK. Look, I am a vibrator girl through and through. However, I think it's really fun and important to bring in an element of penetration to solo or partnered play. That is why I'm excited to share with you guys the Solina line of hyper-realistic dildos brought to you by Peep Show Toys. They are a line of 3 different sizes of super realistic dual density silicone dildos. Not only do they feel and look extremely realistic, but on the inside you have a thicker, more dense silicone, so it really does feel like a real erection. Get 10% off of your entire order at peepshowtoys.com using code SEGGS, S-E-G-G-S.
And I see that being a struggle with a lot of women that live these double lives. I was living a double life, but in a different way. And I felt shame around the fact that I didn't feel shame around it. I was like, no one would understand. Like, what's wrong with me that I'm okay with this? Right. That I don't like that I kind of like it.
Yeah.
It's not to say that I necessarily like the sex. Okay. Like, very few and far between. Sure. But that did absolutely happen. There were some times where I'm like,
damn,
are you sure? Who's paying who?
Yeah. Who's paying who here? I also think it's important to state for women that it doesn't have to be a secretive thing or a double life. Like, I really actually think that men, there are some out there that would be okay with it.
It's like the lying that they're not. No one, it's the lying. I mean, that I attribute that to everything. Is all about, the honesty, right? Yeah. So lots of people don't. They unfortunately shoot themselves in the foot. I've seen this happen with many girlfriends.
They decide that they need to lie.
Yeah.
Like they need to live a double life.
Yeah. And right. I was out with a guy.
End up well.
Totally. It always backfires. And I was out with a guy friend the other night who he was dating a woman for like a year and found out that she was escorting the entire time. Whoa. And then he actually decided to talk to her about it. He was holding on to it for like a week. They were in a serious relationship. And then he tabled the conversation, and then they worked out some boundaries around it and got back together. But the thing is also, you're conditioned to lying so much. You really have to have a clear set of guidelines, morals, boundaries, because it's a slippery slope. Like a lot of women don't think that like sex work is cheating, and then it's like you're lying. So what is the line? Right. What are those parameters?
If you're also not telling a partner
what's the
point? Amount of partners you're having, that puts them at health risk.
Yeah, too. Yeah. It's like just because you're wearing a condom, I had to explain to my friend. I was like, oh no. Like there's no one's wearing a condom during blowjobs. Like it's yeah, during sex, absolutely. But the bareback blowjob is kind of a prerequisite.
No, I get that. And I also get the societal conditioning of like, yeah, I'm going to lie. Like there's no way anybody could ever love me for this, accept me for this. And yet you're going to have your relationship break down if there's a massive secret. Yeah. I mean, sex is already a secretive, taboo, shamey thing. So.
Yeah. It definitely makes a lot smaller of a pool. But I think there's also this bonding that can happen when you're like completely radically honest with one another.
Absolutely.
If you can find someone that responds to that, like do not ever let go. But the other thing I see is then like it's expected that they'll open up the relationship, and it's like no, it's like sex. Like you're not wanting to sleep with all of these clients. Right. It's like just if you weigh it out, what it's doing for you financially and the opportunities it affords you, also, is it a means to an end? Like, what is the trajectory for doing this work? Trajectory? What do you enjoy about it? Like, what do you want to leave behind? And where do you want to end up in your relationship, in your career, and anything?
Yeah. And I think that like certain people can really see it if usually there's a lot of educating that has to be done with the partner. Just like I feel like in my role, knowing a lot about kink and BDSM, there's usually going to be this little hurdle of education. But all of the sex workers I know and escorts I know, they are in relationships, and it's not necessarily inherently just open because they're sleeping with other people. Like it's what they can come up with in their relationships. So okay, you have the first initial experience, and then when you look back on it, like was it overall positive? Was it overall negative? Because I think that people have so many notions.
Yeah, it was definitely a net positive.
Yeah, bank account net.
Yeah, exactly, net gross. I formed some really authentic connections with my clients. Yeah. A lot of them became a handful of them became very good friends, people that are still in my life today.
And regulars.
Yeah. But the other thing is like, and I was sober 90% of the time, which also surprises people. It's like, oh, there wasn't a gun to your head. This isn't from trauma. My parents are still together. They're great people. My mom's a social worker. Nothing happened that was traumatic to incite this. I can sure unpack certain things. Like I was a very timid kid and, my mom.
Why do we do anything we do?
Yeah, exactly. We all have lowercase t trauma and uppercase, some of us, that we can attribute things back to. But it was a very empowering thing for me to do. I think the vast majority of people are terrified of sex, and it's the weirdest thing. It's why is sex bad? Like, why is it so taboo? Why are we making it bad?
Well,
why are we making pleasure
more
bad?
Because it's taboo. Like it's
Exactly.
I mean, that's the way I look at a lot of kink stuff too, is I'm like, oh, this is the most taboo we can get, so we want it more. We can't have it. Like it's all. I think that like there's a balance of like there's massive amounts of shame in our culture about sex and pleasure, but I also think that if there wasn't any of that, it might not be as like fascinating for us.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It factors into morality, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I mean, I am kind of paradoxical in the sense that like I've never cheated on anyone. I'm a firm believer in monogamy. But was I the one that was being cheated with? Absolutely, right?
Right.
But I'm like, in my friendship circle, I say this all the time. If anyone is ever cheating and I find out and I get asked, I am not covering your ass. So like, I'm a weird paradoxical. Yeah, I know. I'm a Capricorn.
She's a loyal gal.
Yeah, exactly.
So overall net positive life experience. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in the sex work that I've done, it's like I feel like I see a window into this person's very authentic and vulnerable self. Yeah. And I do feel like there's kind of the running joke of being this therapist for some of these people.
Hence what I do now.
Yeah. You know? It's a perfect merging of worlds.
Oh my God. I should have been on retainer with several clients who message me. Like they talk to me about their relationships, their marriages, their kids, their work issues, everything. Mm-hmm. Because unlike when you step into a therapist's office, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm still like, I'm paying you. Like you're like, and I don't see the human element a lot of times, right? But there, again, it's just, you're going to naturally land there or you're not. And they're going to tell you things that they would never tell their spouse, their therapist, their best friend, their sibling, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it tells you a lot about how people are whole. And it's made me more forgiving of people in general. Like I used to be like, cheating is cheating. You're a terrible person.
Good.
Now I understand the nuances of all of that. Yes, and it's highly nuanced. Like if your partner is, you know, making bids to sleep with you on an ongoing basis, your wife or your husband of 10, 20, whatever years, or even a few, 2-3 years, and you're shutting him down and you're trying to have a conversation. But I know if I get shut down during sex, I am internalizing that like crazy. It is a huge,
rejection.
God, like I am, it's rejection. Yeah. It's rejection. Just like, you know, if a woman's opinion gets shut down or, you know, if her emotions are not being acknowledged, men feel through sex, right? Like, and Coral does as well. It's just, why are we scoffing at men that expect that or need that? That's a fundamental.
Need what? Oh, sex.
Sex. Yeah. It's a fundamental human need. It's intimacy. It's how they feel everything. You know.
No, I mean, I like to talk about how much sex gay men have with each other. I mean, women don't have a grinder, as far as I know, and also the trajectory that is often stereotyped about women together in long-term relationships, and often there's sex, it's less consistent, it's honest, it's more pleasurable, but it's very different. Like the sex culture of women dating women and men dating men is very extreme because of our hormones. We are completely different creatures. And so I think that it's really difficult for so many men and women in heterosexual long-term relationships to find a middle ground with sex. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, my wish for our future in a few decades would be that it wouldn't be such a big fucking deal for a man in a heterosexual relationship to go hire a sex worker to have sex. Yes. Because you know what? It's actually going to be safer and better for your relationship than him finding it somewhere else. Oh, because that's where he's going to fall in love and it's going to be a whole thing versus the boundaried sex worker where you pay for a certain hour, you have sex, and then he's not bugging you, because how many relationships are sexless, 20 years in? I preach this all the time. And, I kind of, I don't want to say interrogate, that's too harsh of a term. But whenever I meet anyone new, men namely, obviously I table this conversation, and I don't lead with like, I was a sex worker, because I'm a million other things, and that's not my person. It's like, that's one of the things that is part of who I am. And being a sex worker doesn't make that the front runner. It's not a personality trait. Yeah. It's an experience, but the number of men I'll get initially before I was like out, they would say like, oh, like that's, there's something wrong with sex workers. That's something, they're screwed up, daddy issues. Or they'd say something like, I'm proud to say I've never paid for sex work. I'm like, okay, well, I've heard men say that too. Yeah, have you coerced a woman? Have you pretended to care about them because you wanted to have sex with them? Like, have you gotten them drunk? Have you lied to them? Like, they're like, okay, but that's better than paying for sex. Right. Also, people don't realize another
thing I just want to shine light to. Sex workers have the most stringent boundaries of anyone, like too much. So sometimes where it's like, wow, we cannot penetrate, pun intended, this icy cool veneer. And also we're clean as hell. Like it's like, you know, I don't remember the last civilian that used a condom, right? And like with sex workers, that is the norm.
Yes.
So
yes, I mean the stigma around it being
dirty
and like, yeah, I mean, I had a friend who was asking some guys out on the street on St. Patrick's Day when they got STI tested. They were fist bumping that they'd never been STI tested.
That's insane. That's insane.
So, and also I think clients that are seeing sex workers are also being more responsible. Like they are.
The level of respect, again, at that level, at a high-end escort level, is like unmatched.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have had profoundly worse dating experiences that I have. I think I had like maybe a couple like not great clients and like one actually scary situation. And all the time I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, I never felt better about myself, which is also, again, a slippery slope because you get paid for validation, right? And it's like you kind of develop this false sense of self if you're not careful, if you don't stay rooted in your reality. And especially as you start to get older, if you've led with your sexuality and your appearance, then that will inevitably start to
make vanilla dating challenging as well.
Yeah,
real world dating.
Well, it made communication really difficult because I was used to like, oh, you're not going to listen to this? Okay, I'm out. I'm out.
Or block.
Yeah. Goodbye. I call it, you know, escort entitlement or provider privilege. I see this happen with a lot of girls I'm friends with, or it's like, this never happened to me because we know I'm a gifter. I pay for men. Every boyfriend I've had, I'm like, hey, take my money, please. Which is actually a big thing in Europe too, or in Amsterdam, is a lot of these women are in relationships and they're just so thankful that they're in relationships that someone would accept them, so they pay for everything. So that's like, so it's like this like
$50.
I know
to fuck for 15 minutes.
I know
back to back.
I know.
They should be taking on a fucking vacation.
I know, but it is something that like I see. So here, women struggle with that where they're like, "Oh, he's not paying for my flight. He's not." I'm like, "Whoa, you just met this guy, like,
right?
You know, like
this is not somebody that's booked you for a weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, and what you kind of come full circle to being like, I just want a normal. I mean, I hate.
Not normal,
I don't really like Dan Blazarian. I don't like for obvious reasons. I think he's just not. But he does say something about like going to the ends of the earth of like promiscuity, which he did, and obviously so have I. And you kind of land at like monogamy,
any
like the simple
are going to even out. They're going to balance out.
And then now it's like I mean I've always been monogamous, but I'm like I just really want like I really like the simple things. I'm quite traditional, and I love that part.
And you can have been a sex worker and be traditional. You can be
most
all of the fucking things.
Most are actually quite traditional and like pretty sane women, you know.
No, I mean, I really hope that in the coming years we can break down a lot of that stuff, and also just have decriminalization, not legalization, is kind of the main thing I've gathered so far in the U.S. But like, I mean, I don't believe that people are, from what I gather, at least like in New York, people aren't getting arrested for it. Yeah. But they could potentially. And I think that the harm that comes with things not being decriminalized makes it so that women who are assaulted aren't going to police. They're not going to other people. They're not causing more harm.
Yeah, that happened to me when I first started ages ago. And I was I was robbed and assaulted, and I had no one to call and nowhere to go. And this is the other reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because when I started, like I had no one. I remember Googling like escort therapist or support group, and there was something for, you know, trafficking victims, abuse victims, like street level, but assuming
that they're all sex workers need saving, need extracting and saving.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, like what if this happened, but this was an isolated experience too, right? Which it was. And have I been assaulted in my real life? Absolutely, you know? But that's why I am starting Sex Workers Autonomous. So it's a place of like where women can go for vetted resources, support, therapy. I have a database of accountants and financial managers, because also a lot of them feel like this money is dirty.
Yeah.
And they're living this double life, so they're not claiming a lot of it. They're not educated on their exit strategy, where to invest, things like that.
And they don't have to have an exit strategy. Have an exit strategy.
No. But you should diversify,
yes.
because your body will, depending on your volume. But I also know, who was it? Who was the woman that wrote? Is it Elizabeth Berenstein? She talks about how she's like, if you don't want to age out of sex work, I've never seen a sex worker age out of sex work. And I like, you don't get too old. Like the clients don't, there's always going to be clients.
Yes.
And that's the oddly like liberating thing
on sex sites.
Yeah. I have never, and it's also about how you brand yourself and like how you position yourself, which is why for me, I was always like authentically, I used a different name. But I was always, authentically myself and never, I couldn't, I could fake orgasms. I could not fake emotions. So, which drove a lot of men crazy, because they'd be like, oh, how do I get to you? And then I'm like, what? This is so weird. It's an interesting space for sure.
So when that incident happened, I mean, I just think it's important to hear, like, did it did it run through your mind, I want to call the cops, but I can't? Like, was that?
Well, you know what I actually did?
Yeah.
No, I like,
It was just a no.
It was just a no. It was not, it was a non-option.
What I'm doing is,
I called another client who literally got me a flight home.
Well, they care about. Yeah. Like a good client cares about you.
And I couldn't talk to anyone else, not a soul. So I called another client, and he connected me with another woman who's a very good friend of mine to this day. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Former sex worker, and that something similar happened to her. So that's what got me through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He helped you get like a flight?
Yeah. Like sent me some money. And he was like, what do you need? Like, I think he paid for like some emergency therapy too, because I was getting robbed blind. And he knew, a couple other women that had experienced similar. Right. So
yeah, I think it's important when talking about sex work to not glamorize it, understand that there's privilege involved, share the full range of stories, but also not perpetuate the main tropes and narratives that we were forced there, that we don't like it, that we don't want it to be the end goal. Like,
the vilification of it or the glorification of it, that's what I have a really hard time with, because also just because I was a sex worker or someone, it does all not mean that they're this profound, philosopher all of a sudden either. Like, let me make that clear. I am not so crazy and unique and like incredible and brilliant. Awesome. I'm pretty awesome. But I don't have all the answers just because I did this either. And things can still go wrong. And when things went wrong in my life, now that I'm being open about this, people want to attribute that back to sex work. Like, that's because you're so fucked up. Like, I've heard that one before, luckily by people that don't really know me at all. Anyone in my life who knows me is like, oh, you're so amazing.
Because of this.
They're like, you're actually, the people, when I started to share, it just 10x'd my intimate relationships, like my friendships that I had. And no one was really surprised. And I wouldn't say surprised and like, oh, we knew that but they were just like, that tracks. Like, you're a weird person. This kind of makes sense. Like, something was unorthodox there.
I mean, I think that's what I love about the sex and kink space, having this podcast, also just being a generally unfiltered person and having gotten the feedback. I was talking about this with Allie, like throughout my childhood before I knew I had ADHD and all these other things of like, oh, you're too honest, you're too abrasive, you're too like out there. And now it's like, those are my fucking superpowers. Yeah. And sharing the crazy thing with somebody on a first date or a first meet with a friendship, I'm like, that's how we get to the good shit. Like, if I talk about with small talk with somebody, I want to blow my brains out. Yeah. I think that's why I liked you right off the get-go too, is I'm like, we're just like, let's go trauma dump. Like, let's go.
Yeah. I know. Yet my dad's like, you're not for everyone. I'm like, well, who wants to be for everyone? No, certainly not me. Like, I'm like a 1 to 5 person person. Like I can't, like,
Yeah.
and let's get to the meat of it because people are going to find out who you are, whether we're going literally or figuratively at some point. So why are we wearing these masks? Like, what's the point? And I see this happen so much, like with men and women, is women will lead with, I mean, men do too, obviously, but women lead with a certain persona to get the guy.
Yes.
And then it's like, they're not that woman. They're not that girl. And they're, they don't want to give blowjobs. They don't want to do these things. They don't like, and it's not all fun and games. And it's like, and then men are naturally like kind of intimidated or polarized by someone that's like upfront and puts it all out there. But time and time again, that the woman they end up dating ends up being the actual crazy one. And I'm like, I'm just crazy. What you see is what you get. Like, this is all of it right here. I have nothing else to hide. Try me.
I think that's a really important point of the masks we specifically wear early on in relationships and dating, because those masks are generally the reason fights start and relationship ends.
Yeah.
So like bring your craziest fucking self at the beginning.
Yeah.
Bring your authentic shit and your lack of small talk. Like bring it, because even just like you said, blowjobs as an example, if you have been conditioned and you think that that's what will keep a man or will have a man
and you don't
like
actually
you,
like
and
it
you
too.
don't actually enjoy them, so they fade away after
Can't
the first
relate.
month.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, then that's where like resentment comes into play. And it's not just about the blowjobs. We can talk about other stuff here. It's and I was talking about another guest with this of like, what's been hard for me about dating, having the podcast, is being seen as kinky sex host podcast girl that I can explore all of my deepest, darkest fantasies with, because she just loves doing that with
She's
new
up for
people.
anything. Yeah.
And, pro bono.
Yeah.
And then the reality behind closed doors is, when I get home after interviewing, I take off all of my clothes and I put on my big baggy t-shirt and I wipe off my makeup. Like this is
and you
me.
just want to watch TV and like get all
this
cozy.
This is me a few times a month. I mean, granted I do love dressing up in New York, so things will be a little different. But like I am a goblin at home. I want my fucking food delivered, my TV shows, my marathons, my doom scrolling. Like, and so the most recent guy I've been dating, it was so cool because we met in the wild, and he actually was like, I don't think he's not a social media guy. Highly recommend dating them.
Swoon. Find me if you're not on social media. I don't know where, because you wouldn't be watching this.
Hey, maybe Spotify search. Maybe they came here through other methods. But no, like, please, I've actually always said this thing. If he has a curated Instagram profile, he's going to ruin your life.
Oh, it's on my...
Because it's one thing to post every once in a while. Like a guy that posts like him and his bros on a trip once every year, that's fine. If it is curated and he has aesthetic taste.
If there's a private jet photo, like...
Oh, gag me.
Kill me now.
He probably paid to have it.
Just, or an Instagram story, a selfie out, like maybe an ironic one, but like once a year. But just if you have more than like 8 posts on there, ideally like you post every 2 years.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes,
it's like people are like, women will be like, no fish on your I'm like, no, a fish is acceptable.
Okay.
I would rather, like, I don't want like, the aesthetic curation. Like
it's
club,
curated. I mean,
clubs, I want no bottle service. I want no private jet. I want no music festival.
I don't think all women who post often are narcissists, but I think that
there's
the majority of men that post daily or like post these,
double standards exist, man.
Going
like
back
I have
to
them.
my point, which was that he was not really a social media guy, and right from the get-go, he was like, I don't think I want to follow you, and I actually don't think I want to listen to your podcast. I know. He's such a good boy, mostly.
That.
But it's like the fact that he already kind of gauged that this part of my life was a bit of a persona isn't the right word, but like
it's another silo of you. It's not all
lights
of you.
And cameras on.
Yeah.
And like, I just loved that. He was like, I want to get to know you. And I was like, I love that. Great.
So
because what we do is extremely slobby. We just hang out in bed and like do nothing. So I just,
Yeah, I get that too. People assume I got invited to, we've talked about going to sex parties and how I end up playing couples therapist.
Oh my God.
I never have sex with anyone.
I recently squirted for the first time and it was a lot of fluid. I was surprised. I squirted like 5 times in a row the first time I did it and everything was drenched. I spent the entire next day doing multiple loads of laundry, and as excited as I was to have squirted for the first time, I also realized that I needed a solution for the problem at hand. So I am so excited to be working with Splash Blankets blanket. They create incredible waterproof blankets. They can be used for squirting, for sex in general. They absorb up to 1 liter of liquid. I mean, I just use mine as a cozy blanket. They are extremely diverse, and I absolutely love them. So go to splashblanket.us and use code SEGGS, SEGGS, for 15% off of your entire order. My entire life changed when I started tracking my hormones and my menstrual cycle more closely. That's what I love about the Stardust app is it's far more than a period tracker. It is an entire hormonal health universe inside of an app. It is beautifully designed. It is fun. It is hilarious, and it is extremely educational. It has helped me redefine a relationship with my cycle that makes it much more lighthearted, and it's extremely helpful as you go through the month. Wherever you download your apps, go and search for the Stardust app, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
I just find it fascinating. I meet cool people there. I meet new friends. I also have a lot of friends like in the community that work in the community that throw these events.
Yes.
And I like the idea. It's just so contrived to me at this point. Like, if you tell me to do anything, I will not want to do it, first of all. But people assume like I'm just out there like, and I'm like, first of all, not for free. Second of all, I've done that. Third of all, like, no, like, it's like, if you've done all the thing, it comes back to the libertarian thing. Like,
just the assumptions too, the assumptions that like having done sex work, we're just highly sexual people.
I am, but now also my sexuality has changed because I was conditioned to be performative for so long.
Yes.
I could not orgasm with a partner. Like, it wasn't until very recently that I could, because then I would, even get out of it and go into a relationship, but I was still conditioned that way, and I wasn't prepared for getting into a relationship. So, it was insidious in that way. And that, if you're faking orgasms, if you're faking pleasure, then that's indicative of how you're doing everything, right? Then you're like lying about everything in some way. It's like you can't be your authentic self. You're conditioned to people please. So, which is why I always say like sex is a metaphor for life. It's symbolic of how we do everything, how we do sex. So so it's like, I'm very, very cognizant of that, and I have to have like a profound connection. I don't like casual sex. Doesn't mean I can't have practice partners, it's just, I think that like whoever I'm being intimate with, I have to kind of be in love with to a certain, like there has to be something, and holding the dialectics, holding duality of like, this can be true. I can have this profound connection with someone, and they can also not be someone I'm going to be in a long-term partnership with, because they don't meet all those pillars.
I mean, I think for women, it's much more of a process to get to a place where we feel safe and comfortable orgasming in front of somebody. And that's usually not going to necessarily
and there
be
was so much
first go of it.
Yeah. And I felt so much shame around that because, people assume like, oh, she's highly sexual and blah, 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 blah. And like, then I'm like, oh, I've got to be that way then.
Right.
And it's like, actually for me, I was so disembodied. So for me to get into that embodied state, it takes like complete safety and trust. And I just finished this book, Magnificent Sex by Peggy Kleinpatz. And she talks about how she interviews like hundreds, if not thousands of couples.
Oh, wow.
She's a professor of sexology and psychology at the University of Ottawa, I think. She's amazing. And
thousands of couples.
And there's good sex, there's great sex, and then there's magnificent sex. And magnificent sex is like when you get into this flow state, this euphoric state where it's
that
like
happens to me after I have 2 to 3 rounds of sex.
Yeah, you said that.
But that's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. For me, it's just I didn't see it coming, pun intended. And it's not about the positions. It's not just like I didn't expect that to happen when I had it, and it's not like you can't. There's no
formula.
Particular formula. You just have to embody these states of being. So she interviews all these couples, and they talk about none of them really say love. They say trust. Like we fell in trust, like trust at first sight, or we were falling in trust. Like that, I think is huge. Where it's just this unspoken recognition of each other, and like you can you just have this innate awareness of another being.
I mean, I think that there's a lot happening with energy, and that sounds very woo-woo, but I think there's a lot happening with energy that we just don't have science for yet.
Yeah, I agree.
When you meet someone, and it's like...
And not chemistry. Like the book also talks about that. Like chemistry is not something they talk about either. It's
a vague word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
But it's like...
thinking about the partners that it's not that I trust... When I think back about like the really positive people in my life, or the very like, ooh, I think I loved them things, I'm thinking of the commonalities, and it's not like, sorry, I'm not speaking eloquently right now. It is about this trust.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm thinking about one guy specifically. That, like, he wasn't a trustworthy person.
But there in that space, you felt
there
somehow
was safety and trust for me in who he was showing up as with me. There was vulnerability.
Okay, I think I know what you mean.
It was messy.
I think I know what you mean. For the way I would relate to that is like, because I have what you might say like a dark undercurrent, right? I also I would just resonate with darker like poetry and music and just depth, and like I make things more complicated than they are.
She's
but
a moody girl.
Yeah. But I also have a history, as we know. Complexity, layers,
yes,
you know?
yes.
I resonate with other people that are like contradictory in those ways.
Sure.
That like,
I'm like, oh, you're fucked up.
Yeah, I don't want to say a trauma bond, but like it's this recognition where it's like, I see you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I've had that with darker people. And it's like, and I have a darkness in me. I haven't, you know, like I've been both an incredible person and a terrible person at times. I like to think I'm more incredible all the time now.
Therapy, baby.
But wholeness, like right. We can't put people on like similar to sex work. It's like glorification or vilification. And that's just people in general. Like we have to accept them for being whole. So I think if you can, so that I've had that experience in sex where it's like, yeah, they're not an incredible person or like, but it's like this, like we see each other, and being seen is everything. It's like when that happens with someone, like it's just, you can't, there's also not really language around that.
Right. I know. I was just trying to come
and
up
that
with
definitely
language.
plays into magnificent sex and flow state in sex, right? Like really, truly being seen. There's this synchronicity that happens.
And I think being seen when it comes to sex and sexuality is also about like feeling so seen that there's a lack of insecurity in your body.
Absolutely.
Too, because I personally am really struggling with that. Like I've gained a lot of weight and I don't like my body, but with certain partners, I know that it's not even like an inkling on their radar, and there's a safety in that. So it's like feeling connected with somebody and seen enough to not be focused the whole fucking
it takes you out of your head
on our body and like, ooh, my tummy in this direction. And like, let's turn off the lights. And it's like, that stuff will definitely not lead to a flow state. Yeah,
it takes you out of your head if you have the right partner and you check into that state and you sync up like that. And then again, you know, I get asked all the time about like sex positions and all, and I'm like, oh,
come to the sex educator.
I was
to ask them what your favorite position.
Yeah. I was at this this Laura's like bathtub gin thing that she hosts, and she was asking bathtub gin. It's like this cabaret thing that she hosts. And it's so fun. I love it so much.
Laura.
Yeah, we love
She'll be on
Laura Desiree, everything, Eros Unbound. And she asked these girls sitting in the front row, they were clearly like young college girls, like, what's your favorite position or something? And the one girl, this is how you know that she has no experience. She's like, reverse cowgirl. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. That is the most performative position, and it is not. It's not. That's like porny shit.
So you can look at my ass.
Yeah, and it's like it does not feel great for it doesn't feel bad. It just doesn't really do much. It's not really a connection. It's addicted. Like so many things I can get into. You know, like I and also, or the guy that's like trying to do like gymnastics. You're like, chill the fuck out. Like amazing, incredible sex is just like.
It's also slow.
Yeah. Oh my God. Playing with like pacing. Have I? Well, I think
no. I said I recently had sex with a guy in his 20s this week. Hello, New York.
Same.
And it was so. It was also fast and aggressive, and like I love a good pounding at the end.
It has to ebb and flow, you know.
And like in being in my like mommy dom nurturing dominant era, I literally kept pausing and being like, slow down.
Yeah, jackrabbit.
Slow down. Yeah. Yes, which time and place.
Exactly.
Or at the end of a scenario, but like that was my main feedback to him.
Did you give a performance review? Did you give him a performance review?
Let's talk about how you've incorporated that into your sex life. Coral has recently given a performance review.
Well,
book a call Calendly link.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for all of you. So I was dating someone who was age appropriate last year, and didn't work out. It was long distance.
What is it? What is age appropriate?
38.
Oh no. I just mean the word appropriate.
Oh yeah.
If it is correct.
Yeah,
right,
I gave
wrong.
up on that now.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore. And so then I was like, clearly that did not pan out. And I think also millennial men, like, intimacy.
Go high or low, ladies.
It's just, yeah. Well, also millennials are just fucked, in my opinion. I think that we were so entitled, all of us.
We're
and,
on
like,
a weird cusp of generation. Like, I feel like Gen Z, like, they know who they are. They're having good sex.
Love Gen Z.
Me too.
Love them.
No, I do.
So I, as an experiment for science, decided to go on Hinge and change my age radius.
Literally did the same.
And to 18 to 8. I want to see what the fuss was about. 18 to 24.
Okay.
And I got, of course, like, just surged, and it says I'm a sexologist. So I had so many,
Jesus
like,
Christ.
young
Not only is
boys.
she the hot older woman, she knows about sex.
Yeah.
So she can teach me.
And I thought that's what I was like, this could be fun. This would be fun. And I wanted, like, the frat experience, like, I wanted to be the talk of the locker room. And but then it was just getting so annoying. I was like, oh, like, none of these kids have game.
Yeah.
I mean, boys, men.
Yes.
Young men. And then this one, I matched with this one, and very, very smart. Like, he had something about mindfulness on his profile or something. And so anyway, 24. Yeah. Ivy League, psych grad, full scholarship, and Capricorn like moi. So we love love.
Interesting.
And
Capricorns could work together, but not all can.
Work in some ways, for sure. So it's interesting. So I'm just going to go check this out for the experience.
I mean, yeah.
And we started this relationship of sorts.
Dynamic.
Yeah, this power dynamic. And it was so interesting because it checked me out of all these projections of what I had. I'm like, if I date someone who's age appropriate, then I'm like, he should want to marry me. The
traditional shit.
Yeah, like, he should be ready and blah, blah, blah. Because this individual was 11 years younger than me, I didn't have that. I had no preconceived ideas of what it should.
Which actually can bring in more confidence, I feel
my God, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
So it's made me totally embodied and present, and also, like, we authentically like to spend time together, as opposed to, like, okay, date 3, now we're like, it's been really interesting.
The clocking of it all, because of where are we headed, what are we, because at these ages we should be expected to do this.
And I will say for 24, very, like, he has sex like he's been doing it for a long time. None of this jackrabbit stuff. And it's like, it caused me to also slow down and check out of that performative realm, because I didn't have any fear of what he's going to think, or like trying to lock him down or anything like that, Well,
like, almost this thing with dating older guys where it's the fear that we are going to be rejected and that it has to be long term because society thinks that we should get married and do this thing.
Yeah.
Whereas dating younger, it's a bit more just carefree, because it's like, could this really be anything? Which it could, by the way, like, things.
But it's like, this is what I mean with this, like, it is significant, but it's also, he's not going to be my husband. You know what I mean?
It's fleeting in this way that actually makes it really lovely. And I think that, I hope that we can, as a society, shift towards not every relationship has to be the one and has to be, like, left on bad terms.
Chris Donahue talks about that when we were at our conference, our sexological conference in Denver a couple weeks ago, about slow dating.
Ooh.
Like, and really, like, now that I'm doing that again, it's like, what a relief it is. It's just so great to be curious and bask in the exploratory phase. And I'm not talking about just sex at all.
Yeah.
Just like, we think, if they're not, escalating things by date 3 or whatever, or by 4 months like from now, then like what?
Conditioned to be like, what's
and
the
I've
point?
certainly been in relationships where, like, I didn't even love, I'm thinking of one boyfriend in particular, where I gave him an ultimatum with marriage, even though I actually, like, didn't even love him. I was just like, you're 45, you should want to get married. Like, and it's like, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, that was my conditioning. So just leading into, and that comes in tandem with me now being totally authentic and, like, autonomous with my past, and, like, having that through line there, which I did not have before. So it's deprogramming me, and, like, I think like attracts like in those scenarios.
Definitely.
You know?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being honest about everything about you today. I know it's a little newer for you, so I appreciate it. I mean, I think that especially younger women are they need to hear from people like you. It's super important.
And I will say too, like, sex work is not for everyone at all. It's you have to have a real solid foundation.
Yes.
And be very aware of who you are and why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and if you get asked, like, yeah, is this something you can share with people? Before I was outed, I always thought that if anyone ever found out, I would kill myself. I literally was like, I will end my life.
Which is so wild because that shows how much internalized shame you had.
Mm-hmm.
Like about, I like this and I do this, but if anybody found out, like,
I'm unlovable.
Wow.
No one will, and I still kind of struggle with that. I'm like, well,
sure.
Again, it's going to take a very unique, enlightened.
It will regardless.
It will regardless.
Not, you had done sex work.
It would exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Who fucking cares? Can you go back and share about the outing? Would you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people have heard of the word doxing but don't know what it means.
Yeah. It was a friend's boyfriend, one of my best friends at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Her boyfriend found my ad. And I had gone back to it after a long sabbatical because I was
out of a
clinically. I was
relationship.
clinically depressed. I actually I had a company,
right.
and then my partner and I split up, and I was misdiagnosed with bipolar 1 and then bipolar 2 and put on a myriad of medication that made me 10 times worse.
Antipsychotic.
And I've been circumstantially depressed, but I'd never been clinically depressed. And I never really got it. I was like, suck it up, Like people in my family had, and I didn't really understand like this paralysis, this inertia they would experience.
Yes.
And then it hit me, and it was terrifying. And, my grandpa took his life through that. I've had other relatives. So it became like very scary. And so I could not work. I let my company fall to the wayside, and I started escorting again. And strangely, it was one of those things again that could check me out of these ruminating cyclical thoughts about like literally like white knuckling the day and being like, if I'm still like this tomorrow, I'm going to end it. And I started sex work again, and I was able to be present and just like check, because I could only explain this to my friends, like about the depression, and it didn't really translate.
Well, and I bet some of them were associating it when you started back up with sex work again of like, that's going to make it worse. Like, that's probably what people thought.
Well, I hadn't told anyone at that point. Mm-hmm. So,
and you were face is the word, which means that your face was blurred.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But,
people just don't know these kinds of things.
Yeah, I know. The terminology. We'll do a little resource page. And one of my best friends at the time, who I told I used to do it, but I didn't tell her I was again. Mm-hmm. And her boyfriend, who
would have been actively looking for a sex worker,
who was actively looking to hire a sex worker,
right? And
then terrible person, extremely abusive. And he found my ad, even though face in, but if you know me, I guess you can tell. And he told everyone. And keep in mind, I didn't betray anyone. I didn't lie to anyone. I didn't cheat on anyone. So who was I harming?
Right.
He was trying to hire a sex worker and found my profile. Right. So that was just disarming for me. Anyway, brutal. I had about 12 hours of a complete like hyperventilating, full-blown panic attack. I went to the hospital.
Were people texting you about it? Like what?
Yeah, one friend did.
Yeah.
And then, no, she didn't. We still haven't talked about this day. She dropped me completely. We never had a conversation after.
Because you were a sex worker.
Yeah, never talked to me again.
And that's why the fear of being out is so real, is because people might, cut you out.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, thank God I'm out, because now I know who the real ones are, Jesus Christ. Like, and good luck in a few years. Where is this going to go?
Your husband who's dishonest with you. Yeah.
It's wild. It's freaking wild. So, then I had a panic attack, and then I just had this moment of clarity where like that same energy that surged and was like, I was like, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. I was like, wait a second, this is what I need. This is what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is, I found my purpose.
Day this happened?
It was like the day after.
That's crazy.
After I zonked myself out. And then the next day.
After the Xanax.
Yeah, after which I'm off now, clean, off Xanax. And I was like, I had this revelation. I had
Wow.
all these consecutive revelations where I'm like, I wish there was a woman like me to hold my hand through this and to be there and be like, you're a human being. I see you as a human being. I see you as a lovable person. You know, again, you are not wrong, or you are not broken for doing this work. You're not a bad person for doing this work. And so that's when I went back to school and decided to land on my new career path.
Yeah.
And it's never ending. And what I love about sexology in general is like, you will never stop learning. It just keeps going and going, and I'm obsessed with it. And I'd always studied psychology, sociology, philosophy, sexuality. I didn't even know what sexology was.
Yeah.
And then but that was fascinating to me. Same with clients. You know, I would always study them and analyze them, and I was like, this is so interesting.
Yes.
And so,
Totally.
I just realized this was what I was supposed to do the entire time.
Yeah.
And my whole life before that point was regret. I was like, no one will ever fully know me, see me, understand me.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was going to do with my life because my career or my past company fell to the wayside, and I didn't love doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And so after that, it was like, it all made sense. Everything made sense.
Totally.
Like, and I don't regret any of it, which is a weird thing to say.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to begin wrapping it up. I don't want to wrap up, but we have to soon. Yeah. So your mission, you are working on building Sex Workers Autonomous, which will be what again?
Yeah. So it's a community and resources that I've sourced for sex workers. So it's they can Sex Workers Autonomous, SWA.com. And I have, like I said, vetted therapists, coaches. We have community chats, like Signal chats, where they can all reach out to each other that I'm curating. We do like seminars as well, where we have financial advisors come in, like marketing specialists, like to help you with your branding, accountants. So just all sex positive, sex worker positive individuals that are
like
safe.
This exists.
Nothing like this exists. It's all totally fragmented.
Because it's so hush-hush.
Even photographers, yeah.
It's so taboo and hush-hush.
Yeah, yeah. And
which pushes it more into the shadows and generates more harmful experiences in the end for sex workers when they can't come together and unionize in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that I'm working on is creating investment opportunities for sex workers. There's a sex toy company that we're working with where they can invest. So it's like funded by sex workers. So it brings that power back to them.
Fucking cool.
You know, because who better to speak to these things than sex workers themselves, right?
Thank you, Coral.
Yes.
I adore you. Really impressed by the work you're doing and really appreciate you being vulnerable and open about all that today. It's a big deal, and it's like the fruition of your vision continuing to come to life, I think.
No, I'm excited.
It's big things coming. Stay tuned for our 2025 shenanigans. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. Be sure to stay in touch with us on socials at Seggs Talk Radio Podcast. That is SEGGS Talk Radio Podcast.